What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's doing well. In today's video, we are going to be talking about going to a coding bootcamp versus going to college versus trying to teach yourself how to code if you're trying to become a professional developer or if you just want to learn how to program. And we're going to try to find out which option is best for you based on talking about the pros and cons of each option, talking a little bit about my experiences with each one, and ultimately telling you guys which option I think is the best route to take. So if you want to find out, stick around until the end of the video to find out which one I think is best. But to get started, we're going to start off with some of the pros and cons of each option, starting with college. So let's start off with some of the pros of going to college or university. So first off, a degree is required to even be considered with a lot of companies. So you won't even be able to get past the HR department or even get an interview request to become a professional developer if you don't have a college degree with a lot of companies. Why is that? Well, a college degree communicates to them that you have a formal education, and it's often required that you have some sort of technical degree, whether it's in computer science, math, engineering, or physics. So it communicates to them that you know how to learn or understand difficult concepts. That's, at least in my opinion, why a college degree is often required. So let's move on to the next point, which is structure. So you are going to be provided with a structured learning environment in college, although it is fluffed up with a bunch of unnecessary coursework, like who gives a shit about American history if you're trying to become a professional programmer. It's just kind of stupid. But you do get a lot of structure in your learning environment in that you have a curriculum that is given to you by the university that you have to adhere to. You have certain classes that you have to take in order to attain a certain degree. So they tell you what you need to learn. You don't have to figure that out for yourself, which is something that you have to do when you teach yourself things. It also makes it easier to gauge your process, or gauge your, what's the word I'm looking for? Your progress, as you learn. You know, you're gonna be getting good or bad grades. You're gonna figure out if this stuff is for you. You might get to a certain class that's considered a weed out class, like Calculus 2 is often considered a weed out class for technical degrees. If you can't pass that, maybe this isn't for you. Or maybe it is, I don't know. But that structure is a huge benefit. You also have homework and tests, which are going to make you have to study the material. Another thing when you're teaching yourself how to code is that you often don't have that pressure of getting good grades, and you're not sunk in with a bunch of cost like you are with college. So there's pressure to feel like you need to get your money's worth out of your education. That's another benefit of going to school, of spending money on going to school, although it is sort of a double-edged sword. Next point, networking. You get a huge network of people in college that are going to help you learn and ultimately help you find a job. So you have professors and teachers' assistants that you can lean on when you don't understand something. Also other students, your peers. When you don't understand something, you can reach out to them and they can help you learn something. Your peers and your professors and stuff are also going to be the people that are helping you find a job. They're going to put you in touch with companies. When your peers graduate and get jobs, you know, they can refer you to those companies. So the networking aspect of going to college is also huge. And that kind of feeds into the next point, making it easier for you to find work. Again, that relates to the first point up at the top. Degrees required to be considered with a lot of companies. You get that network and you have that structured learning environment. So it is going to help you get a job a lot easier if you've been to college. Like it's not going to hurt your chances of getting a job. It's only going to improve them. So now let's move on to some of the cons of going to college, which there are also many. So number one on the list of cons is going to be cost. Going to college is ridiculously and absurdly expensive. You know, there's things that you can do to mitigate and minimize costs, like going to school in state, getting scholarships and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And unless you have rich parents or, like I said, get scholarships, you know, that's just what it is. And you're going to rack up a lot of student loan debt if you can't afford to pay it all, all that cost up front. And then that debt accumulates interest, and you're going to spend a long time paying all that stuff off. So that's a huge con of going to college. Also, you have a lot of upfront costs without any guarantees. So college is going to help you find a job, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a job. You still have to go out and find it for yourself. So it's a lot of upfront cost with no guarantee that you're going to find a job, although it is very helpful to help you find a job, right? So the next one is going to be time and efficiency. College takes 4 years to complete, which is a lot of time out of your life. You know, from 18 to 22, you're probably not going to be doing a whole lot else with your life. So you might as well go to college if you can afford it. Going to college doesn't hurt your chances of finding a job, like I said in the last slide. But it does take a lot of time. Efficiency is also a huge problem. So while you have that structured learning environment, there's also a lot of bullshit you have to go through in college. Like you have to take like general education classes like history and sociology and psychology and all these electives that are not relevant to your career choice at all. And you just have to do that if you want to graduate from this accredited institution or this university, which is extremely annoying. I know that college in Europe is a little different. Like you go to specialty schools, like you go to engineering college or you go to, you know, computer science college. It's kind of like more of like a boot camp, but that's not how it works in America. And you're paying for those classes that even though you don't really give a shit about them, which is a huge con in my opinion. Also, college can be extremely difficult and it's a very high pressure learning environment, depending on the university that you go to. So if you want to go to a more prestigious university, like if you're going to go to somewhere like Harvard or MIT, it's going to be extremely difficult to get a degree from there. And it's a lot of stress and it's a lot of pressure. I went to the University of Maryland and I got a degree in mathematics, and that was very difficult. Maryland is a nationally ranked school, or internationally ranked school for that matter, in their mathematics program, and it was very, very difficult and it was a lot of stress. And you know, in the end, you know, it helped me get where I'm at today, and I learned a lot of valuable things, and I don't regret it, but it was extremely difficult. And you don't have the luxury of going at your own pace, whereas that's like something you could do if you were teaching yourself how to code. Lastly, I think college education is overly theoretical. Like I got a mathematics degree, and towards the end, like in the 400 level or senior level classes, it was purely theoretical mathematics. And it's like, while that stuff is cool to learn and it like really challenges your brain and really gives you like good problem solving and critical thinking abilities, which are some of the benefits of that, it's not practical at all. Like I don't need to understand how to prove theories in calculus in the real world. But understanding how to think that way was very valuable, but you know, it's not necessarily practical. I know in computer science degrees that they're also very heavy on the theory side as well, where it's just like, dude, just teach me how to code. Like, I don't really care about programming theory or algorithm theory. But like I said, that stuff does help you learn how to think in a very critical manner, which is a benefit. So it's kind of a double-sided sword or a two-edged sword. So those are the cons for college. Now let's move on to some of the pros, college, like a lot cheaper than college. So I think a good coding boot camp can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. College education can cost anywhere from $80,000 to $200,000 plus. So that's a ridiculous amount of money. Going to boot camp saves you a lot of money. You also have the upside of that upfront cost, right? Where it's like you're paying money for this. So you're going to make sure that you get your money's worth out of this boot camp and actually force yourself to learn the material. That's some motivation that may not be there if you're going the self-taught route. Like you can spend as much money as you want to, but the pressure isn't there for you to learn. So it's like, yo, I spent money on this. If I don't learn this stuff, it's a waste of my money. So that's another pro. The material is also more focused on practical usage. Whereas college can become overly theoretical, boot camps are more focused on skills that are going to be more relevant in the actual working world, right? You're going to be learning stuff that you will be able to apply to a job directly. You're not going to waste your time on a bunch of theory that you might not necessarily care about. You're also going to be learning from pros that know what the working in the real world is like, so they're going to do a better job of being able to teach you that stuff. Another huge benefit of going to boot camp is that it's project-based, right? So you're going to be able to build a portfolio. I can't stress the importance of having a solid portfolio if you want to become a professional developer. That's where you get to showcase all of your work. So really cool little story here is that the job I currently have as an iOS developer, my technical interview was all based off an Instagram clone that I built. So I showed them that I was like, hey, I've actually built an Instagram clone. And that's impressive in and of itself because that's a really famous app and it's also difficult to build. And my technical interview wasn't some, ridiculous coding test. It was them just going through my code and asking me questions about it to see if I actually knew what I was doing. So having a portfolio and being able to show off some of your projects is huge. And boot camps are project focused. So they're gonna help you build that portfolio so that you can show it off to potential employers. Also, you're learning from real life pros. I talked about that already. You're going to be learning from people who know what it takes to make it as a professional developer. They know what the working environment's going to be like, the stuff you need to know and understand. So they're going to be teaching you that in a way, in a trajectory that's more focused on working at a professional job. Whereas college might be, like I said before, overly theoretical. The main goal of college isn't to teach you just so you can get a job. It's to teach you, Whereas boot camps, I feel like, are more focused on actually getting you a job. Networking and resources is also a huge benefit of going to boot camp. Just like in college, you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of peers that might already be in the working world. They might have connections in the working world. And you're going to be talking to people like your professor, whoever's teaching you this stuff. And they're going to also be helping you get jobs through the connections that they have. And boot camps, like I said before, the main goal of this thing is to get you a job. So you have a lot of resources at hand. Like a lot of these companies are partnered, or these boot camps are partnered with big companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, startups, all that stuff. So they're going to be able to send you that way. So you have a lot of networking pros and a lot of resources going to boot camp. Like I said, in the next bullet point, we talk about job partnerships. There's also in good boot camps, at least, no cost until you find a job and potential reimbursement. So like I talked about just now, a lot of these boot camps are partnered with companies. So they're going to help you find a job once you graduate. The good ones aren't going to charge you anything until you find a job, right? So that's a huge, huge benefit because you don't have to spend a bunch of money up front and then come out with no job, right? That's kind of like a huge con of college. You have to pay no matter what. They don't care if you find a job or not. They want their money. But the boot camps, they don't start charging you until you find a job. A downside of that, though, which we'll get to in the next slide, is they often take a cut of your salary if they helped you find a job. Another huge benefit is potential reimbursement. If you don't find a job after X amount of time, maybe 6 months or something, you get your money back. So it's like, dude, you got to learn this awesome skill. You now know how to code. And you got your money back, and I'm sure you'll find a job eventually, You just have to keep looking or work harder or do something differently, and then you can get that money back. Another huge benefit is accountability. Like I said, there's that upfront cost sort of fallacy, right? Because you have to pay money upfront. Well, if there's no cost until you find a job, you're still paying money, right? It might not be all upfront, but you still have to pay these people money. So you are accountable for getting this work done. Also, because you're surrounded by peers, they might be reaching out to you for help. Like, hey man, did you do the homework assignment? And you're going to feel pressure to you don't want to be the guy who hasn't done the work. You're going to want to do the work, and that's going to force you to learn. So those are a lot of pros about going to boot camp. Now we're going to get into some of the cons about going to boot camp. Okay, so first off, boot camp is extremely fast-paced and intensive. Some of these things are 3 to 6 months long, and they pack a lot of material into those 3 to 6 months. So if you're a slow learner, or you might want to take your time with learning concepts, boot camp might be very difficult for you, and you might feel like you are, might make you feel stupid because it's like, dude, I can't go at this pace and I can't learn this stuff. Coding's not for me. Boom, you scrap that idea. Where it's like, if you had, if you could have set your own timetable, or if you had, you could spread this out, the learning material out over a longer period of time, you might understand it really well and actually become a very good programmer. So it's really fast paced and it's really intense. It can also be very expensive. Like I said, there is an upfront cost of having to spend, 10 to 20, possibly more, thousands of dollars. So that's another downside. Even though it is cheaper than college, there is still a cost. Time and schedule. It's going to take a lot of time out of your life. These things are very intensive. It's a full-time thing. You're doing this for, 6+ hours a day. It's like going to school. So it's like, do you quit your job if you have a current job to do boot camp? How are you going to live? How do you make money going through a 6 to 9 month boot camp? That's, you got to figure that out. Maybe you save money up and quit your job and then do this thing, but then what if it doesn't work out? Like, it's a big commitment, and it does take a lot of time out of your life, and trying to live during that time might be difficult. There's also no guarantee you're going to get a job. Like, a lot of times they'll feed the top students the best jobs, right? Because that makes sense. It's a competitive environment that you're in. But say you're like middle or bottom of the pack, like, they're not going to be rushing or beating down doors of companies to give you a job, right? The best jobs go to the best kids at the school. So that's a con of going to a boot camp. And there's, like I said, there's no guarantee, and you have that cost up front, and it's like, you might not get a job, and then you might not be eligible for reimbursement. So you might have wasted a bunch of time, and you have spent a bunch of money, and yeah, you know how to code, but you still don't have a job. It's like, I imagine you're learning to code so you can get a job and make money, So those are some of the cons of going to boot camp. Now we're going to talk about going the self-taught route. So let's go ahead and get into that, which is personally my favorite. So a huge benefit is you can go at your own pace, right? Like I mentioned in the last slide, boot camp can be very intensive, and because of that intense pace, you might not learn things as well as you should. So when you're teaching yourself, you can obviously learn as slow or as fast as you want. Which is a huge benefit in my opinion, because that way you learn in your own way and your own time, right? So it's going to give you a much better understanding of the concepts that you're learning. You also get to choose what you spend. You can spend as little or as much as you want to. Personally, I'm a self-taught developer. I also went to college, right? But I went to college for mathematics, like I said. And I ended up teaching myself how to do iOS development, which I had no idea how to do coming out of college. And I think I spent like, dude, $100 on courses online and watching YouTube videos and just buying little things here and there. And I spent $100 and put an app in the App Store, and then ended up getting a job as a professional developer. $100 Like, that's nothing compared to the thousands, the tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars you have to spend going to college, or tens of thousands of dollars you have to spend going to boot camp. So you choose what you spend. There's no cost or commitment up front, which is also huge. Like, you could start programming and be like, dude, I hate this. I really don't want to do this. And maybe you didn't have to spend a dime. Where it's like, if you go to this coding boot camp or you start going to college for it, it's going to cost you a lot of money, and that could just be money that you just threw away. You might as well have just gone and thrown it in a dump truck. Thousands of dollars. That's a lot of freaking money to a lot of people. So the fact that there's no cost or commitment up front is huge. If you don't like it, cool. You didn't lose anything, except maybe a little bit of time. And that's a huge benefit to teaching yourself. Another huge benefit that I experienced especially was that it shows self-sufficiency and work ethic to employers. Like, I work for a startup, which I love, by the way. I love the startup environment. And at startups, they look for people who don't have to be told what to do, or don't have to have their hand held through every little task that they get. Like, they want people who just know how to figure shit out, because it takes a lot of pressure off of them, right? So my boss can give me something and just be like, dude, figure this out. And because I taught myself how to code, and I've been down those like rabbit holes of like completely not understanding something, and I've like had all that anxiety of not being able to understand a concept and having to teach it to yourself, I'm comfortable in that environment now. And employers love that, right? It also shows a lot of work ethic, like teaching yourself how to do something without the outside pressure or the structured environment that boot camps and college provide you with means that you like to get shit done. Like, you're like, dude, you work yourself, you do that on your own. And that's a huge, huge quality to have. Like, you don't have to ever be told what to do. You're not lazy, and employers really like that. That's one of the reasons I got hired at my job, being a self-taught developer. So now let's go into some of the cons of being self-taught. There is a lack of network, right? So you don't have anyone around you to help you get a job or help you learn things, right? There are like online chat forums and like Stack Overflow and stuff, and there are developer communities out there, but you don't have someone that's like sitting right next to you, or a professor that you can call and get help on something when you might need help with. And that can make or break you, right? If you can't figure something out on your own and you just get frustrated and you get tired of it, you might quit. Because it's like this stuff gets annoying. Whereas if you had someone who knows what they're doing, you have some sort of mentor or peers around you that are in the same situation, they can help you out. So another one is motivation and accountability. It's hard to stay motivated when you're teaching yourself how to code, right? You don't have that structure there, which might, again, could make or break you. And there's no accountability. You don't have to take any programming tests. Or I mean, like quizzes or tests. You don't have due dates on anything. Like, you're just kind of doing it yourself. It's also difficult to gauge progress. Like when you're teaching yourself, you don't really know what you don't know, if that makes sense. So it's like you're kind of in this like weird limbo or this weird purgatory phase where it's like you don't know what to learn, right? And because you don't know what to learn, it's hard to gauge your progress and trajectory on the learning progress or the learning path, right? So it's like you don't know if what you're learning if you're learning it the right way, or you might be doing something wrong, or you don't know if what you're learning is even worth learning. Like you might spend a lot of time learning something, and I've done this too, and it's very frustrating. You might spend a lot of time learning something that's not really that important, right? You might go to this corner case of a certain coding problem and spend days or hours or months or weeks on it, all to figure out that it's just it wasn't worth it. Also, no guarantee of getting a job. It's hard to get a job if you don't have a network. You also have to teach yourself out of the situations, which is difficult to do. And that ties back into the lack of network. There's no one to reach out to. You got to figure it out yourself. And isolation is another big one. And I put a question mark next to that because it could be a pro or a con. Like I personally like working alone. I don't like working with other people. I don't like people in general. So I like being able to just sit at my desk, put my music in, and just start coding, and I get to solve the problem my way. And that's why I like, the isolation of teaching myself things. I don't like other people teaching me. I like to do it myself. I like to be on my own time and stuff. So that's a pro for me. But it might be a con for other people. They could get lonely, So now that we've gone through the pros and cons list, let's go ahead and I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to say which one I think is the best option here. So to me, self-taught wins the battle by a landslide, guys. So let's talk about why. First is cost and commitment, right? So this is only going to cost you potentially a fraction of what you would spend going to college or going to a coding bootcamp. And second being commitment. Like you need to figure out if you like coding at all or what type of coding that you like doing. So say you went to a coding bootcamp for front-end development, but in reality, back-end development is your true calling. You might say oh, I don't really like front-end development. I'm not good at front-end development. And then you've spent all this money only to realize that you don't like front-end development, and then maybe you end up never becoming a programmer at all. With self-taught, you don't have that upfront commitment, right? You can sort of pick and choose and figure out what you like before you commit to anything, which is a huge benefit. Also, you can learn whatever it is you're going to learn in a boot camp or a college on your own. With the amount of resources and materials that exist online today, you can accomplish what you would learn in those other two options with relative ease, right? You don't need to go to a boot camp or college to learn how to code. You just don't. If you do choose those other two options, it would be more for the networking aspect of it, but we'll talk about how to conquer that right now. So building a portfolio is huge. So if you can build yourself a solid portfolio, which is what I did in teaching myself how to code, and you can show that off to potential employers, if you can get past that initial hump of not having a degree, if you don't have a college degree, and you can show off some of your work, and it's good work and it's good code, dude, you're going to get a job somewhere. Someone's going to hire you, right? That's what happened to me. I mean, granted, I have a college degree, and it's a technical degree, which is also a huge plus. But I put an app in the App Store, which was, is often a requirement for app developers. But that's like a certification in and of itself, right? It's like, okay, this kid has an app in the App Store. He knows what he's doing. And I did that from teaching myself. I didn't have to go to a coding boot camp or go to college to do that. But essentially, I built some really awesome projects. Like I built an Instagram clone. That's what I'm most proud of in my portfolio right now. And I sent that to the employer and they were really impressed by it. And my technical interview actually consisted of them just asking me about my code. I didn't have to take some stupid coding test or anything, but it all stemmed from building an impressive portfolio. So if you can teach yourself how to code and build an impressive portfolio, which you can do from taking online courses on Udemy and stuff and watching YouTube videos, then you have a huge leg up, right? Another huge benefit of teaching yourself is learning things in your own time and your own way. Like you don't have some professor or some, boot camp instructor shoving material down your throat and telling you that you have to then take a test in 2 weeks, right? The goal is to make you perform. And when you have to perform on something, it kind of can make you sacrifice learning along the way. Like if you're only focused on getting good grades, you're not necessarily focused on learning, which is the most important thing in learning how to program. If you don't really understand the concepts behind what you're doing, you're not going to be a good programmer. I can't stress that enough, because being a good programmer is about being able to solve a wide variety of problems, right? You're going to encounter things that you've never seen before all the time, and you're going to have to figure out solutions to those problems. And if you don't understand the concepts behind what you're doing, you're not going to be able to figure out good solutions or solutions at all to those problems, right? So when you teach yourself how to code, a huge benefit of this is that you, one, your timetable is as long as you want it to be, right? So you can take as much time as you need to understand something. Two, you teach it to yourself in your own way, right? So it's in a way that you're going to understand the most. It's going to make the most sense to you. I think a big reason I've been able to become an instructor and teach people how to code is because I taught myself these things, which gave me an entirely different level of understanding those concepts than if I were to have someone else teach them to me and just sort of let me know how they understand it, right? So I got to take my time and sit down and really understand things in my own way, which was huge. So that's why I think going the self-taught route is the best. Like if someone were to come to me and be like, hey man, like I want to learn how to code, what do I do? I'd be like, teach yourself and like use these resources. Go on Udemy, go on YouTube, figure out what you like because of the lack of cost and the lack of commitment up front. See if you like it, and then if you're having trouble finding a job, maybe you go to bootcamp or maybe you decide to go and get a college degree. But I think teaching yourself to start and seeing how far you can take that is the best way to go. It's the cheapest option and it's the safest option. So that's why I think self-taught wins. I hope you guys like this video. Leave some comments in the comment section to let me know what you think. Be nice. And hit subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel already. More content like this to come. Also check my courses out in the description if you want to start becoming a better programmer. It's iOS app development for those of you guys who might be new to the channel. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a nice day. Peace out.